I promise today's episode won't be depressing. But today's an important day for two reasons. On the Jewish calendar, today is called Yom HaShoah, which means Holocaust Remembrance Day. This is the day when we intentionally focus on memory and remembering. Today also happens to be the Hebrew anniversary of the death of my daughter 23 years ago. So I've been thinking this week a lot about memory, how we remember. Are we getting better at memory, or are we getting worse at memory? And what is the role that technology is playing in that? So that's what we're going to discuss today, but with smiles on our faces, I promise. Memory and technology. Let's get started. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. And welcome to my friends. Oh, how much do I love these people. Hey, Tamra.
Hello, hello. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I am good. I've been hanging in a Zoom meeting all day long today, but I was like,
Oy.
I have to get off. I'm going to see my friends.
Really? Long Zoom. By the way, did you happen to see that the app rebranded itself today? Do you know about that app?
I did not. No, I have been under a rock in a Zoom meeting all day long.
Yeah, they had a big release today. It's not really for today, but maybe we can talk about it. Let me first hop over, though, and say hello to my brother, Tony. How are you, sir?
I am fine, sir. Happy to be here. Went to the doctor today. Kidney specialist. Everything is fantastic.
And it was a real doctor, not an AI doctor.
A real doctor.
Love it. Glad to hear everything's fantastic. That's what matters most. That is what matters most. And it also matters that our friend Lois is here. Hey, Lois.
Hello, hello. You got to tell me the new name of because I'm one of the first ones who ever got it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So
not that I use it anymore, but
no, I know. I don't. It's called Airtime now. And
Airtime?
Airtime. Huh. Oh, is that? Hold on. Did I find the right thing? Let me just look again. Yeah. .com. It's not even redirecting. That's weird. Did that have a different? Yeah, Airtime.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Okay.
Oh, here it is. Yeah. Is now Airtime. This is a big release, and it's interesting the way they did it. There are now two products. There's Airtime Camera, which is looks like it's a one-time. This is the one-time purchase, I think. Let's see. Airtime Camera, is a one-time purchase, which I think is basically a virtual camera with bells and whistles, and then Airtime Creator is on a monthly thing. So yeah, they've completely redone themselves, rebranded. It's really interesting.
I'll have to find out whether or not what I've got is going to still work.
Yeah. Did you play with or no?
I did when I first got it,
Yeah.
and then other things came out, and I found other things, and then I stopped playing with that sort of stuff. And so it's like, I'm back to my one screen, one camera, one.
Yeah, I gotcha. Well, let's hop over to Canada. Say hello to Dave. Hey, Dave.
Hello, Dave.
How are you, Dave?
Oh, you want me to say hello? Okay.
Dave.
I have a collector's item now. This is the old logo for.
Oh, how funny!
It came with the package when I bought the package. I did use it for a couple of years, and then Ecamm came along with so many better features that I adopted that one. So, sorry, I'll have to try you again as Airtime.
That's fantastic that you have that logo. That's wonderful. And check this out. From across the pond in a hotel somewhere, Leo.
A hotel somewhere, yeah.
Where are
Hi
you?
there. I'm in Cambridge, and on my training course for this, which is, I've got my own logo here, so Dante Mastery. So I'm doing the Dante Mastery training
Dante
course.
Mastery.
So,
wow.
So I'm here today. Yeah,
That's
in
wonderful. I'm
Cambridge.
so glad you're here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And let's say hello and welcome to Mr. Sky Gleason. How you doing, sir?
Hello, and welcome.
How are you?
I'm well, and I'm grateful to live in the land of hospitals and doctors because my mother-in-law, whom we are giving care with and quality of life with, has been seeing many specialists in the Seattle area, and that is a joy and a blessing because they each know very detailed things about how to give her a good quality of life. So
And so you
that's
put them
been-
all together. You actually have a plan of care.
We do have a plan of care, and that's what she just came from, having ALS, the Kaiser system. She goes in for 4 hours, and the doctors come to her, and
Wow.
she sees about 8
Nice.
doctors in an afternoon.
Wow.
That is amazing.
Thank God. That's amazing.
Amen.
All right, my friends, let's get into it. Let's talk some news. So first up on our rundown news for today is AI for K. This is AI for kindergartners. So President Trump, I think it was just one day or yesterday, on April 23rd, signed an executive order to bring artificial intelligence to K through 12 schools in hopes of building a U.S. workforce equipped to use and advance the rapidly growing technology. Now, this is specifically about favoring the application of AI in discretionary grant programs for teacher training, prioritizing in the National Science Foundation, prioritizing research on the use of AI in education. And he says this is a big deal because AI seems to be where it's at. And I don't disagree. I was on a call last night, actually, with a group of students from Hawaii who are using AI. These are high schoolers using AI in their education and actually building companies with this AI. So what's your take? AI for kindergartners, is that too young?
It isn't kindergartners. K through 12 is the range the school covers.
Yeah, but
That
haven't
doesn't
you
mean
ever heard
that
of
it's gonna do
clickbait?
K.
Haven't you ever heard of clickbait? You say K because that's what's spicy
they're
and
cute.
exciting. Yeah.
Well, I think it's going to be more the 9, 10, 12.
Is there a
folks who are
place
gonna
for
learn
is
that.
there a place for a what is the let me change my question. What is the place of AI in education then?
It's
Well,
to
what
be
you
taught,
described
just
in
like
your
anything
opening,
else.
Wait, Dave, go
you
ahead.
described what most people are. They're going to read it as kindergartners are going to have these little iPads with AI or whatever. That's not what's going to happen. They're going to teach teachers how to employ AI in their work. It's about getting people more skilled at the teaching level than the student level. So I would say go for it because any tool a teacher can utilize is going to improve teaching. Generally, it's all about the teacher. It's not about the AI. When I was at the University of Alberta, they wanted video to teach, and I had to teach them that that's not possible. So.
Yeah, so I would push back on that a little bit. I mean, I agree wholeheartedly that for teachers, the AI is a real boon and a tremendous support. But I think it also is going to revolutionize the way children learn and what they learn
I agree.
and the skills that are necessary. I think I don't think this is not going to touch kindergarten. I think it's going to touch everyone. It may not be that kids are sitting in front of tablets, but it may very well be that what they're learning or how they're learning it is radically different than the way you and I grew up learning things.
Well, and that's how you and I have learned over the last 6 months, 8 months, is how to ask better questions.
Right.
And so actively thinking is very exciting for me. My concern is when my wife, the teacher, tells me that the head of education is talking about A1 and
Yes.
the entire announcement from the top down is now, Tamara, back to you.
Well, no, listen,
I'll just embarrass myself and get
bungling
political.
AI to A1 aside, and we're not going to talk about anyone's particular foibles or intellect level in this regard. AI is brand new in a lot of ways. So traditionally education is so slow to adopt things that by the time they do, it is so far out of the realm of possibility of making an impact. We've seen that in iPad reuse. We've seen that in everything that they, have to take a long time. And I've worked in education where I've tried to roll things out. It is like turning a battleship in a bathtub. So I love the idea that we're going to put money into this as it's developing so that we can see how it develops. I think the area where, for me as an educator, one, obviously we need to train kids to be able to be functioning adults. And part of being a functioning adult in this world right now is AI. And this is the thing that's going to get to them. AI is still in its developmental phase. I think where we're going to see it be helpful is in differentiation. When you have a classroom of 30 people and we know that, 30 to 40 kids in your classroom, we know that they all learn at a very different pace. The idea that we're still teaching people same things to entire groups of students who come to the table with lots of different kinds of knowledge is backwards. It's behind. Our kids are not going to get smarter that way. We have to really meet them where they are and lift them up. And I do think that there's a possibility that AI in a future generation, which is it's iterating like every week we get a new version. So I think that this is exactly the time that we need to be putting money into it. And hopefully we'll learn to call it AI and not A1.
This was A1 Steak Sauce's response to that. Agree. Best to start them early.
Start them early.
It was fantastic marketing on their part over on Instagram.
But it won't sell in Great Britain, will it, Leo? Got to be HP.
You're absolutely right. It wouldn't sell that here. I think my view of this, which I think is that it allows schools to actually positively adopt something, which is the biggest problem with a lot of technology, as Tamara was saying, with schools can be that their immediate response is to restrict and stop something because they don't understand it, rather than realize that maybe they don't need to understand it completely to actually use it, and to adopt it and embrace it. And I think this could be interesting because it is at the moment the next generation of something, whatever that happens to be, and we need to be seeing moving forward, because doing things in a traditional way, there could be the argument, this will be the difficult one, is we should stop teaching kids how to write, because that isn't a skill they need in the future.
Well,
I don't think people will know what they're going to need in the future because things change.
Yeah, but writing is a skill they don't.
Well, longhand is different than writing as in creating written words. That's a different thing. Mm-hmm. I want to focus on two things that got in this article. One says it's going to be administered by the Department of Education. I thought they got rid of that. And then the other one says the task force will be responsible for establishing public-private partnerships to provide resources for AI education in K-12 schools. Wait a minute. Why are we needing to get private people paid to be part of our public education system? That doesn't sound right.
That's what we do now.
Well, that's what we do. I mean, teachers are private people that we pay to be part of our public education system, but of course we don't pay them well. But
we're talking about private institutions. They're talking about.
No.
Well, I think they're talking.
We don't pay teachers as private individuals. We employ them.
They're talking about the open AIs. They're talking about the metas. They're talking about those, the ones that are creating these AIs and have these large language models. That's who's going to get this done for us. It's not going to.
But they should have no input on curriculum at all. None.
Well, that's a whole other topic we could spend
that is
hours.
A whole other. It's an interesting topic. I'm not trying to disagree
It's an
with
interesting
that
topic,
statement,
but yeah.
I think this is where I will jump in. I did watch a 55-minute video of the 7 founders of Claude AI, and it's called Anthropic. And they are a split off from OpenAI. And they talk very sincerely about building blocks from the foundation up. And that coalesces with another gentleman that I follow. And he talks about if you build the brick correctly, then you won't have to rebuild the entire house after. And so as a tool, again, this conversation is really hasn't gotten off the tracks, but it is the next language that I think, yes, we were inevitable will be having to speak. And so in the training of it, hopefully we don't just become, who owns what is the question.
That's actually a really, I think, interesting and perhaps profound way to think of it as this is a new language that we all need to learn. This isn't a new subject. This isn't a new. It's just a new language. It's a new way that we will interact with our world. And I'm going to have an example later on tonight of just that. But yeah. Okay. Number 2. This is not new, but it did come across my desk, and so I wanted to throw it out there. I've never been in a self-driving car, a full self-driving car. My daughter has. She took a Waymo actually once. But apparently Tesla has just started FSD, full self-driving supervised ride-hail tests with only employees, but with employees in Austin and in the Bay Area. So my first question is, would any of you get in a full self-driving car without a person driving you?
No.
A Tesla?
Yes.
No.
Not now.
Really? Have any of you been in one?
No.
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 Not so far.
I should have had my daughter.
I've seen
on
it drive
because
by.
She
the-
did a
the
Waymo
Waymos.
and she loved it. It was fine.
Again,
So-
the difference is the optics, from what I understand, now prove me wrong or help me accurately, the optics are different in a Tesla versus the Waymo. And consequently, how it senses things is a critical, decision-making point of, should I run over that person or should I stop and run into a tree?
Well, I
And
don't
also
pretend to
the
know.
article.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The article said that this is not going to be a fully self-driving car. It's not an automatic car. It's going to have a human being in it. And I have a feeling that part of that is because of the rules. I don't think in California today you could have
No, you
something without a
can.
person.
Waymo is, there's no one driving a Waymo. There's
In
literally not a human being inside
San
a Waymo.
Francisco and Phoenix,
Yeah.
both, I think.
There is you're right. There is a driver in this. This is the tweet that they put out. There is a driver in this. The driver is there as what did they say here? A precaution.
Safety person.
Yeah,
yes.
a safety person. They're not actually driving. I don't know
I
enough about.
would use them.
I'm sorry.
I would use them. I would definitely use them, and I think the point that we have to do is, and you can understand it, why a CEO would come out and say, this is the technology, we have to embrace it, and we have to move it forward in here. He's been saying that he was going to be bringing this out for a long time. So this is the steps towards it. Next week, David, I will be in Israel, and I think that would be a great place to try it. Great place to try self-driving cars.
Wait, do they have those in Israel?
Could you just imagine what it would be like there? If any of you have ever visited and driven there, it's got to be one of the worst places in the world to include that.
I've been to Manila. Does that count?
Have you tried
No, quite the
Ecuador?
contrary, actually. Quite the contrary. If you have all self-driving cars,
All self-driving cars.
Right.
then it's
Yeah.
much safer.
I
That's
mean,
it.
listen,
That would-
driving post-COVID is wild. People came out of isolation like losing their minds. I can't even tell you.
Yep.
I keep seeing people go from like the right-hand turn lane and crossing over to make a left-hand turn.
Yep.
People doing crazy things. And if we're not going to make everybody go take driving tests again, then let's replace them with driving cars.
There is a sign in the back of I'm sorry, not a sign. There was a disclaimer at the bottom of the video that Tesla put out. It says, safety driver is present to supervise and only intervene as necessary. Okay, but this is the piece that is interesting. FSD, supervised, does not make the vehicle autonomous.
Yeah. They're parsing words. I mean,
What
They're
does
legal.
autonomous mean if not full self-driving?
Yeah.
it,
You know, a thought occurred
there's
to me
no
while you
human.
guys were talking that there might be a way to get people who have driving infractions forced to be in automatic cars so that they are not driving anymore. And they have to be a 6-month period inside one of these things. They could be test subjects,
That's
we
your
could just
puni- what,
make
d-
little
what are they,
gerbils out of
test
them.
dummies?
Do they have to
Well,
blow
no,
into
yeah,
the?
they'd be
Ah.
test dummies. Yeah,
They have to blow into the little thing before they can start their.
before they can drive
Apparently,
again.
the fully
Yeah.
autonomous service is coming to Austin in June.
I just read
So-
it's coming to LA right away. So
I just read the paragraph that I had misunderstood the first time I read it. It says, in California, autonomous vehicle companies need a range of permits to operate. So far, Tesla only has a permit to test with a safety driver.
Right. So I one of the interesting questions is how different is the technology that they're using than the technology that Waymo is using and things like that, as you said before, Sky. And I don't know the answer.
It's the sensors, and
Yeah.
and that's what I just know enough to be dangerous. Sorry,
Yeah.
spreading
No,
bad
got you.
rumors.
I got
I
That's
mean,
me.
the thing is, like, I just got a brand new car, so I have like all the
Hey,
sensors and things, and
congratulations.
I'm shocked about how many things it tells me to do and when it takes over the wheel and things like that. So we're inching in regular cars to see that this technology is valuable. Like it's super valuable in how how lane changing has been different. Like I literally drive far differently than I did my last car.
I
So
actually noticed, I was just out to dinner just now. I just came home and I took notice of this. I was backing out of my parking spot and I was only looking at the camera.
right.
I didn't need to turn around because the camera I have a used Toyota Corolla, but it's got a nice camera on it and
Right.
I could see everything perfectly well. And so even something as simple as that, you're right. We are
this
driving.
incremental stuff is what Tamara's got. Is we incrementally removed stick shifts.
Right.
And
I
who
miss
here has
stick
driven a
shift.
stick shift in the last 10 years? Yeah,
I miss a stick shift so much.
yeah, I do too. Yeah, they're fun.
I love
They
driving.
in this country where there's a lot of them, they think that they will be gone within 5 years now. And that is a big difference because in Europe we're been very, very far behind on that. So stick shifts will be gone in Europe within 5 years, they reckon.
I drove a stick shift until I had a knee replacement, and then I couldn't press the clutch anymore, so I had to get an automatic. Tony, go ahead.
I'm a little afraid to share this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to stick my neck out. So yesterday I was watching a TikTok, and there was a gentleman and his wife in a car, and they told the AI to take them somewhere that they had never been. And so the car took them, and we're watching this on TikTok as they are in the car, and it takes them past different communities where they have been, and it gets on the highway, and it takes them 40 something miles away from where they were at the time of the prompting of the AI. And they actually took them to a location of some large store, and they turned and looked at each other. Well, we've never been here before. So it was really amazing.
That's pretty cool, actually.
It was someplace in the United States, but I didn't catch where exactly it was.
I love that. It's a choose your own adventure car drive, except you're not choosing. The car is choosing. All
There's
right.
people in London who've never been anywhere else but their own sort of district, and it's quite funny to hear talk to people and say, "Oh, I've never been to that part of London."
Or you could end up in the car that, what was that? What was it, a Waymo? What was it that kept driving around in circles? The poor guy couldn't
Oh,
get
the
out?
Waymo. Yeah.
Was that a Waymo?
The joke
Yes, and
about
then they also have the parking at night when they're all trying to park and they're honking and bugging each other. It is the best video ever.
the New York taxi comment was, when you're getting in the taxi for the first, this is a long time ago, is this the shortest route from where I'm at to where I want to go? And the driver says, "Oh yeah, of course." He says, "Really? Well, because that's the fourth time I've seen the Statue of Liberty."
Right. Oh
Click,
my
click, click,
goodness.
click, 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 click.
I need some help.
Okay.
Help?
So here's my problem this week. My problem this week is I'm not sure if I deserve any credit. So I have been knee deep in this new tool that I found. I didn't find it. It was suggested to me. It wasn't even suggested to me. I saw it on a TikTok. It's called lovable.dev. So let me preface this by saying I don't know anything about coding. I couldn't code if my life depended on it. I have to ask ChatGPT to help me create formulas for Google spreadsheets, right? This was suggested and I tried it out. So let me give you a little bit of a backstory here. So the backstory is I needed, I have teachers in my school and I want them to observe learning, be able to record that learning, what they see, and then have that learning be matched up with our standards and benchmarks and learning goals and tracked in that way. Okay. I had seen one tool that was really pretty, didn't get everything done. I had seen another tool that was really wonderful, but was ugly. And so I came here and I said, what if I could build this? And I started just talking to lovable.dev. Now this is 2 days ago and 36 hours ago of conversation. I quickly blew through the free plan. I then paid $20. I quickly blew through that and I then upped it to 50 and then eventually I upped it to 100 and I'm going to have to go to the next plan after that. But that's because I have been writing thousands of chat messages back and forth with this thing. And it has in turn built an entire app for me. So I'm going to log in and here's my app. So I'm going to say Dahlia was counting sticks outside on the playground today. And if I was on my phone, I would have just pressed the microphone button so I could just speak into that. And now AI is taking over. It sees my input right up here. It automatically says, oh, okay, here's the student, Dahlia Paskin. I didn't put the last name in, but it knows the students. That's a math domain. She was counting, and then I can count forward and backward with it, and this is the specific benchmark. It decided all of that for me. All I have to do is say, yep, that looks good. And then I can say, for this particular child, was this a just beginning? Was she getting there? Or did she absolutely knock it out of the park? Or did she? I'll say she's getting there. If I want to, I can upload an image of some of the work that she did and confirm. And now this will be saved. And now I can go back on the desktop and I can see, I built all of this, I think, but that's my problem. That's my question. Okay. So here's how many different submissions have been for each child. And I only have my 3 daughters in here as pretend people. And then I can do recently. So these are the recent ones the recent submissions. I can come down here and sort of see a heat map of each child. I can look at what the different skills are and all this stuff. I can click in here and it's going to take me to exactly the one that they were working on. There it is. I can even edit it. I can download all of this and create reports. I can upload. I did this all by just talking to this app, lovable.dev, and it's created this. And now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm syncing it to my GitHub account, and I'm going to launch it. It works now, but I'm going to make it available for my teachers. So here's my problem. Here's my question. Every time I share this with someone, and I'm so excited to share it with people, every time I do, I start by saying, I want to show you something I created. I didn't create it. AI created it. But I did spend about 36 hours working. But
no,
I don't know. Do I get any credit for this? If I take all of this code. Let me just show you one other thing. Look at this. This is ridiculous. This is the code that this is written. I don't even understand what any of this is. Look at all this. All this code this thing has written. And now I can just dump this into GitHub, and it looks like I did it all.
Yeah,
Is this
we all have so much to say.
okay?
Everybody's
Wait,
gotta
Tony,
say.
Lois, Tamra, Sky, go, Tony.
So the first thing I'm going to say is that you have to take partial ownership for it from this standpoint. Could what you created have been done without the prompting that you put into it?
Good question. The answer to that, let me just answer the question
You are
for you.
original.
Let me answer the question for you. You're right that someone had to prompt it. Did I bring any unique knowledge or insight other than this is what I imagined? No.
Yes, you did.
Is it just you that you're questioning yourself?
Because you are who you are. You are the mind that is behind the prompting. You and I could put in the same prompt. There is something that will not make them the same. It is a tool, and I'm gonna push it to from this standpoint. If you are a Uber driver and you were a carriage driver, the carriage and the Uber vehicle are the same thing. They are
but if I'm a Waymo driver,
but they are
versus an Uber driver.
No.
Well,
Right?
there are two.
If I'm the
look
guy
at it
sitting
as
in
a
the
tool.
Tesla, just in case, I don't know. Lois, what do you think?
So you had the thought, you had the idea, you had the desire to create this thing, whatever that thing is. Now, whether or not you spent the money to hire a program to write things down for you,
That's a good
or
point.
you went out and you hired a programmer to write the code for you, you don't get credit for the code writing, but you get credit for the idea.
Yes.
And so I would say that you would be the owner of the app, you would be the idea behind the app, and you would not be the code writer.
Correct.
So that's a really interesting way to think of it. I basically hired AI
Yes.
Yep,
to
you
code
did.
for me.
Yeah.
And you don't have to tell people, I did it, I didn't, somebody else, you don't have to say any of that. You said, look at this app that I created
Right.
from my thoughts and had somebody else write for
Right.
me.
Let me just I will push back on one thing on that, and that is that if I hire someone to write an app, there will certainly be back and forth. They will, we will have an
And you put
ideation,
in prompt
and
after
then they will
prompt.
send me a thing, and I'll give them
version of-
feedback.
yeah,
but
right.
I'm sorry,
You're
not
the creator and they're the contributor.
yeah, but
it's
not,
it's-
the back
that's
and
a
forth
normal
will
corporate
be nothing
environment.
like what I did with this. I mean, this was
No.
literally the past. I have not stopped.
Depends on the coder.
I'm obsessed.
Right. So
with
you're
it.
like the president of the company. Like
Yep.
if you were to just look at this from a corporate standpoint or just any kind of creative venture. So for me as a producer, I am coming up with ideas or I'm purchasing an idea or I'm guiding a writer to an idea. And then we're going to make that idea happen. I'm going to assemble a team that are going to be coming in with some ideas, but for some shows, they're coming in to do the thing that I'm asking them to do. So they're contributing in that way. Are you a coder? No, you're not a coder. But this is the great thing about what's happening right now is that it's allowing people to create and iterate without having to wait in line. That doesn't mean that people who are coders are not also creators, because many people who create apps are also coding their own apps. You just don't happen to be one of those people, but that doesn't make it less creative and less under your control.
Sky.
I would go further just to say.
Hold on one second.
Oh,
I think I picked on Sky and then Leo. I don't know. whatever.
Free for all.
I
All
will
right,
jump
Leo,
in.
I think Sky, go.
Okay. As an artist, you can have an idea of a concept and you can own that idea and you can sell that idea. And it's in the Washington Gallery in DC. And then if they move that idea, they will hire people to paint string lines, frame it on a wall. But if you sell that, or if it goes on the road, i.e., to Chicago or someplace else, they then paint over that wall and it gets reinstalled in Chicago. Now, you physically didn't paint anything, but it is your intellectual property idea. And so that is a precedent to your point. And my other word that I would like to introduce you to is the word experiment. And I love the ownership of this group saying, no, David, you ain't no programmer,
Right.
but you have a problem you're trying to solve. And this is the new tool that we're going to experiment with. And if it helps make our life better and doesn't harm, then I'm sure, that's what they thought about putting asphalt on roads and changing, horses to automobiles.
Yeah.
Which also I would have loved to have that program, by the way. So kudos to you.
Yeah. Leo, go
It's
ahead.
on GitHub soon.
All I'd say very quickly, David, is you're the conductor of an orchestra.
Mm,
And a conductor gets the praise at the end of the concert. And
Yeah, but
you
that's
are
always bothered
exactly
me.
the conductor.
That's always
Yeah, I
bothered
know,
me.
but
because
that
from where
you're
I
not
sit, the
playing
conductor isn't doing
somebody.
squat.
But if you don't have the conductor and you don't have the idea and the concept, it will never work.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you have to be sitting there in the seat. Somebody has to be there. You're it.
And that's true of any creative, writing, directing.
Right.
And I
That
asked my church choir director, I said, are you a creative? And he says, oh, no. I'm a person that brings people together to bring the vision of the artist out, but I'm not an artist. I'm a craftsman.
Dave, take us home.
Well, last word from me. I don't credit the hammer for what was made by the carpenter, but I give credit to the carpenter for realizing my vision. So you are in a process and you keep discounting yourself. That's the therapy answer. Quit discounting your contribution because it is original. What you showed us is amazing. And if you put it out and your teachers use it, nobody's going to credit. You can say, I made it with AI. That is, I used a hammer or I hired a guy who has one. But still, you own it. You got to learn to own these things, David.
And your teachers will help you iterate
Not only
it.
can I just say this real quick? Not only did you get a hammer, you kept iterating and getting better hammers after one another. You got one hammer. This is the hammer with the best wood. Then you got the hammer with the best steel. Then you got the hammer with, and you just kept going on and on and on. And you haven't finished yet.
Your teachers will be your collaborators because you're going to put it in their hands and then see how it works.
Right.
And you're going to get feedback from other humans.
Right. They'll be the beta testers. I would encourage anyone who's interested, please believe me when I say, don't avoid this because you don't know anything about coding. I know nothing. If you can imagine something that you might want to build, this is so much fun. It is so much fun. And I believe you only have to pay if you start going down that rabbit hole. So if you're just playing, I think you can get in for free. It really is. One of the things that's lovely about it is how you can see, this is my favorite thing about the OpenAI versions also is how you can see it think, right? So, I'll just show you this quickly. So it found an error. So I didn't find an error. It compiled something and then it said, oh, wait a second, build unsuccessful. So then I clicked that and then it automatically says, it shows me the mistake. And then it says for the code person, I get the error below. And so here's the error, right? And so then it tells me what it's doing. I'll fix the type error in AI workflow component. And of course, I'm trying to read this as I go and I'm learning little tiny bits. And then let's examine here. Let's fix this issue by doing this. Oh, I fixed the issue by doing this. And sometimes it doesn't work. So, there have been a few times when it just doesn't work or when I fix one thing and it breaks three other things. Thank God for versioning. so that you can go back to prior versions. But if you're at all interested in creating something for yourself, a website, an app or something, this is a blast. And I thank you for listening to me.
Help?
Let's jump into our main topic for tonight. So, memory. I was just at dinner with my daughters and I asked them, do any of you know my phone number? And they all did. They all did, which really surprised me because I don't know theirs. Now, so maybe the issue is not technology and memory. Maybe it's the fact that I'm getting old and memory, but technology has changed the way we remember, both for the positive and I think perhaps for the negative, as I think everything in this show is coming out to be, that there's the plus and minus for both. So I wanted to talk tonight, again, with sort of this backdrop, at least in my mind, of not only remembering phone numbers, but remembering history. How has technology helped us remember history? How can technology distort our memories of history? There's, of course, a lot of that going on all over the world. So I want to dive into this with you, and we'll start with Dave. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm with Tamara. I go back to Usenet, and at that time, if you were going to look up something and try and find the source of something, it only knew as far back as about 1980. The internet only could remember as far as 1980. And as Facebook and MySpace and all the other fun games and Farmville, that sort of stuff, it's allowed the system to start accumulating the history, and we're getting more and more of human history in the internet. And now we know all the way back to, Mesopotamia. So everything we have had as history written is now on the internet, and it's really worthwhile because we went to book and libraries for that before. So memory is not changing, it's our access to it. But all memory is in context. And the best example I can give you of this, I got a job at the university and I worked there for 9 years running a TV studio in the education faculty. And I lived nearby, so I walked to work every day, and it was winter and summer. And every day the path took me past the rear of the library building where the exhaust fans for the air conditioning were at floor level. And I would pass the smell. And every time I passed the smell, I was in grade 3. Grade 3 was a year where there was so many crowdings that we had class. My whole year was in the library of the school, and the smell of books and wood and all the rest of the stuff infused in my memory and in emotional time, because in grade 3, everything's exciting. And I have that embedded. And we know this from some Alzheimer's stuff, is that if it's connected to a strong emotion, you remember it better. But if it's not, you tend to rebuild it as you go, and it becomes a story rather than a memory. So I'll leave it that, because I stopped writing 15 notes for these shows because I never get past 3. So that's my 3. I'm going to sit here and I'll react to all you guys.
I can't hear you, David.
That's because I'm an idiot and I pressed the button. I apologize. Again, too many buttons. Tamara, you're a storyteller. And we already talked about technology and stories, but how do you see the role that technology has played in memory in the world of storytelling? And
Well, I agree with Dave. It has to do with access. We just have so rich of a resources at our disposal in any sense of the way. I don't agree that we should stop teaching writing because I really think it actually, I work with students to write novels, we used to do National Novel Writing Month together. And it was amazing to see kids who could use this as ways of expressing themselves in ways that they couldn't before. And I think some of what we do with school, and this does relate to memory, is we're teaching kids topics and not skills. And so I do think that one of the things that I love about technology in writing is it really lets us iterate in a much faster way. It lets us keep track of things. One of my favorite uses of storytelling in memory is is the ways that we are able to document our own family's lives and get people on tape and really be able to preserve their stories. And I think that that kind of preservation happens in every form of storytelling. So I am excited about technology and storytelling.
Yeah. Well, sorry, Lois, go ahead.
So, one of the things that you said about not remembering someone's phone number, I think that when there is something happening in my life and I want to remember it, I can either just leave it in my head and every few minutes go, remember to this, remember to this, remember to this. And that takes up a lot of brain power. But if I can write it down on a piece of paper, then I don't have to remember all the time because it's written down. And that, I think, is the thing that we are doing with technology. I don't have to remember every single thing. I have a schedule, and it's on my iPhone, and my husband has it too, and so we can compare what are we doing today, and I don't have to remember it. I might remember it, but I don't have to remember it. So I think that's one of the big things, and it's been coming for a long time. Paper and pencil, computers, doesn't matter. We're just using it as a memory aid, and that's a good thing. Now, I will confess that I have tried for years to find an app that would be my mother's brain. My mother had the capability of remembering everything about everybody. You know, it's like you say, what about Abigail? Oh, yeah, that's your cousin. She's the daughter of so-and-so. She worked over there for a while, and then her husband had her move over there and it's like, how does she know all that? Well, she remembered everything. I have never had that capability. It was nothing to do with technology. So I want to make sure that we remember we are not uniform. And some people have my mother's brain, and some people, like me, write things on notes.
In such tiny ways, Lois, that resonates with me. I was just thinking as you were talking about when I get reminders in the morning about Facebook birthdays of my friends. I have no idea when their birthday is, no idea, but Facebook reminds me. Or when in Zoom, the fact that everyone's name is right below them. Thank goodness for that gift. If everyone could just wear name tags in real life like we do on Zoom, because I'm terrible when it comes to names. So we don't all share the gift of memory. You're absolutely right. Leo,
I also push back
that
we did know everybody's phone number. Because, in fact, I had a Rolodex with 800 cards that I had to go to every day, or I carried a notepad with me, or I went to the telephone book. So I did not memorize.
No, but the important numbers you knew, right?
Right. I still know my childhood number. But why did you know them? You knew them because you were going to somewhere where it didn't necessarily have. Like, you're pulling your phone up. I feel like, yes, those important numbers, but we have access to those numbers now, and we don't use the phone. We don't use our phones for phone as much as we use it for texting and other things.
Yeah,
so
that's true. That's true. Leo, what do you think?
I think going from where Tamara was saying about what you remember or what you need to remember is a really interesting point, because as you rightly say, I can remember my phone numbers from when I was a kid and my friends' phone numbers from when I was a kid. What I'm worried about with this, and I've seen the negative side of this at times, is certain things seem to get locked in. We remember certain things because we have the information, the media that happened at certain events. So they become priority in what we remember in the history. When we don't recall or we don't see the other parts, or they get the message can get skewed, so you end up only seeing the focus, as they always say, that history is written by the winners, and so consequently you only ever hear one story or one side of something. And that is the worry to me, is that we don't ever hear the other part, and that we end up assuming that this is the only way, because this is the way that is being taught over or being represented as the only solution for something. And that, to me, is getting worse rather than getting better, because it's almost like, well, that's verbatim now. It's written that way. That's exactly the only way. And it's really hard. And we're finding, we were talking about this today in my course that we were dealing with. We were saying that sometimes if you set some of the AIs and say, this is the answer, they're locked. You cannot unlock them and change them, because it's like, that's the solution for something. And it's like, that isn't the solution. And that's where the problem is going to be. I'm
gonna throw to you, Dave. I just wanted to say that talking about memory, specifically with AI, is interesting, because, you know, when with O3, or maybe it was with 4.1, whatever, when OpenAI announced that they now have memory, long-term memory, that was that's a huge boon, that these LLMs can remember their own conversations, what they've engaged in. But as you say, sometimes that also locks them in. Dave, go ahead.
That AI may suffer from eyewitness syndrome, where the recollection is not what happened. Many studies have been done about people who witness something, and from 7 perspectives, they get 7 different stories, because a person is putting their emotions into the story, and their reaction to the event is more important than the actual facts of the matter. And most people can't recall facts of the matter. They can only recall their impression of it. And this is why I say it's in context. Memory is always in context. And until AI gets a wider context, which I expect it to do, then it'll have longer and longer term relationship memory. I also wanted to mention that there's a thing called false memory in psychology, where a person being interrogated or discussing an issue or working on a story and trying to recall something is led by the instructor or the therapist to find a story that fits their feelings about the recollection, but it isn't actually their memory, it's a false memory. And I think sometimes, as Leo's warning, if we get exposed to enough of these generated events or accounts, we're going to believe that that's what happened. And in a sense, it's both the various witnesses are missing that can corroborate it, or that AI has invented an answer and now we claim it to be legitimate. And that's a danger that tech has.
Lois, go ahead. Oh, we can't hear you, Lois.
I do family history research, which is genealogy, and many times you go and look for connections and pasts and history and history and history, and you can get quite far back. But how do you know whether this is true or whether that is true? You read a newspaper article and it says, your grandfather did this. And then you look further and you find the documents of probate records and it says, your grandfather did this. And so our memories are shared experiences with the people that we were with when we jointly created that memory. Now, that eyewitness thing points out that each of us not only shares the experience, but we remember it according to our own personal history. And so memory itself is not constant, it's not fixed. And I agree that we're in a problematic time, because so many things are written and the first time you read it, oh, you know that's not true. But after the 50th time that you read the same thing, you think, well, maybe it did happen that way. So this nothing to do with technology. It just has to do with memory and how we store it.
Yeah. Sky, go ahead.
I've got 2 movies that are coming to mind. One is Brazil, Terry Gilliam, and the other one is Minority Report, because both of them talk about the manipulation of a fact or story and how who's in control of that, and what is its purpose to manipulate a people group. And the story about the story goes back to Tamara's comment. Is my understanding of story is that an event would happen, the tribe would gather around the fire pit, and they would say, well, this, and to Dave's point, this person said, well, it happened this way, that the bear did this. And they said, no, the bear did that, because that person was in a different perspective, different part of the, the huts and things like that. But eventually they would collaborate as a community, what that happened, the earthquake, the bear, something. And then there would be one person that would be the keeper of that story, because they were gregarious and outgoing. And when a stranger would come to town, they would let Billy Bob do the storytelling, because Billy Bob was big and So I tell that about story only because I was a part of a theater company for 20 years and know a gentleman that had a photographic memory. He even made it on Jeopardy, just couldn't bet very well. And so it only lasted one game. But the point is, he passed away recently. And I realize on our Facebook group of about 200, 300 people that still connect with each other because we were in the trenches together, a community, that we were allowing him to be our historian and keeper of our stories. And he has now passed. Now, is it critical to our life that we won't have the story about certain things? Well, there's a hole in my life now because Jim has passed and took a lot of the history with him that I didn't, to Lois's point, I didn't memorize. I don't know my wife's phone number, but Siri does.
Yeah.
So there's my
I like
story.
your,
Story
little
about stories.
A little thing you had, David, in your rundown list was digital amnesia.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we think we're experiencing. It's not a thing that's actually real, but we keep encountering a situation where we think we know something and we don't actually. We think we know it. And then we go to digital resources like Google and we check it out. And then we find out, oh, well, yeah, I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't really know it. So in the sense that we have a digital amnesia, it's probably not true. It's more a case of offloading. And as Lois quite well explained, some people have a capacity for capturing everything and being able to organize it and keep it in their head, and I resent people for that. So in the sense that we're able to recall these things, it's a skill. And I don't think we have digital amnesia. We just have too much reliance on the tool, and it's a good tool. We're all celebrating it.
That offloading is really important. I mean, we do that all the time. Notion talks, the app Notion talks about itself as a second brain, right? That's where we're supposed to be able to keep all of that stuff. I think about even directions. Goodness, I remember driving cross country with a triptych from AAA. I loved my triptychs, right? Or actually knowing how to read a map. And nowadays,
Thomas Guide.
yeah, people have. It's possible that people have poorer senses of direction because we have offloaded some of that knowledge and memory.
Okay, but we may have offloaded that, but do they travel further?
Right. So the counter to that, thank you, Leo. The counter to that is, yes, we've offloaded that and we've made more room now for creative thinking, for whatever we want to put there. Right. You're right, Leo. And in some ways, and I don't want to get into the politics of it, but every time I hear the argument about we have to bring back manufacturing jobs, I think to myself, no, we don't. No, we don't.
Right. No.
Because by offloading those, we have made room for more creative work, for more. Again, I don't want to go into
research,
but that's just
development.
You made me think of it because that's what I keep thinking of.
Yeah, that's
Well,
true.
I think Leo brings up
the false memories that I have. It came about 5 years ago when I'm telling a story, and then I realized I'm with my wife, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, was that my experience, a book I read, or a movie I watched? It's like,
But is that a bad thing?
Right.
only if I claim that I did that fancy thing that I saw.
Okay, but
you were doing that before any of this.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk about, if you go right back to the beginning of what we have recorded, cave paintings, You know, at what point was that the one, you know, how do we know that was the one thing that was there? We're seeing what the echo of something that was of that time. And then you take that forward to what was written on stones, to what's been written in newspaper or anything. You have a view of something, which is good. And it's, in a way, it's great that we have these stories in this history of that. I'm just worried that we are now getting to the point that in our search for, in quotes, the truth, we're ending up recording we were built to forget things.
Right.
You know, you don't remember your teeth falling out, well, you sort of do, but you don't remember these things. You're not supposed to remember to the detail that we're now supposed to remember. And then you're sitting there going, you're building your life around something. I mean, I find the thing that annoys me the most, you go to a concert and everybody's sitting there recording the concert on their phone. Why don't you watch the concert? You'll never, ever, ever watch that video, and you've just ruined it for yourself. You know, and it's
You didn't really go to the
you're never
concert
going to watch
at all.
it.
I think part of it is that there's so much information coming at us, and all the time. We talk about this a lot, where really I think it's not that these tools are taking things away from us. I have to be really honest with you. It doesn't matter to me that I remember my mother's phone number. What matters to me is that I remember us walking together at the Huntington and enjoying each other's company. And that's what I want to make space for. I don't want to make space for a phone number. You know who can remember that? My iPhone. And if my iPhone goes down, I can phone a friend and get her phone number. So I think it's about picking and choosing and not getting so worried about what we're not remembering and saying we have this collective amnesia, because at the same time, I don't want to have to. It is amazing to me that if I want to know something, I can instantly look it up. And I don't have to go to the library, although I do go to the library and I love the library.
That's a good place.
These are the things that I'm remembering, the things that I care about. And the truth is, when I know I've spent a little too much time in my digital spaces is when I start remembering things that I don't care about. And I start identifying, hey, that TikTok strand that I've been following is actually not that important to me. And I need to set a limit on that. But do I care that I remember my family's phone numbers? No, I can get to them. I want to remember them.
And to Leo's point about wanting to capture everything, when selfies first came out, a friend of mine pointed out, he says, oh, that's just like a postcard. I said, what do you mean? He says, I'm here, you're not. It's like, well, that's, wow, ouch. And yes, then I became a king of selfies.
You know, those AI clips that people have been wearing that records everything. I think is it audio? It's just constantly
and
recording.
video sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't need that kind of nonsense.
Can I take a moment? And
That's not remembering, though.
No,
recording
it's
is not remembering.
Not remembering.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
I just wanted to poll the group here, if it's okay with David.
Go for
How
it.
many people here experience deja vu?
Oh,
Yeah.
Do we really
It's
understand
unanimous.
what it is? Yeah, it's unanimous. All humans seem to do it.
I'm dyslexic, so it's Ujaved.
And you're allowed. I guess I think, is that a false memory, or is it a prescience, or is it a construction that eventually is manifest in your real life? Because I suffer from them regularly. And I realized, but in my 20s, that it was actually after a stressful period. So I had these summer festival things and my mind was totally occupied. I didn't have time to stop and enjoy or remember or anything. And then a week later, after it's all over and I've had my sleep and everything, I start having deja vus. And they are what's happening next, not what just happened.
Right.
And I've had that happen so many times, it's spooky. So I wondered if that's a function of memory or whether it's a short circuit in the brain. I don't know.
I don't know if it's a
good.
short circuit or if it's how we're wired. The truth of the matter is the human brain is so fascinating. And it is the creativity. When we think of creativity, we think of writing and drawing and things like that. But creativity is complexity. It is complex thinking. It is thinking at multiple rates and different concepts. And that is something that I don't think we'll ever fully understand. I think we're going to continue to figure out that the brain, people come at any situation in a certain, like with however they see the world, they're experiencing it in a way that no one else is. And I think that that's the part that's so interesting.
That's why I'm excited about seeing the architects of some of these tools. Last week, I got to see the Nobel, is it Peace Prize? The gentleman who is a doctor in neuroscience is the head of Deep Mind. Is that
Oh
what it's
yeah, I
on
watched that
Google?
also.
I did. Yeah, I shared that with you because it felt important because these are the creators of the foundation of those bricks that I talked about earlier. So hopefully they'll get us thinking and get the tools thinking correctly and in a good player, bad player way.
Yeah, Leo, go ahead, and then we'll hop over to Lois
So
and Tony.
I'm gonna just change this around slightly on something that quite a while ago I did a show with David, right at the beginning of or in the middle of COVID. And one of the things it was aimed at helping synagogues go online. And one of the points and why I started doing it was that I would sit there in a service and a rabbi would stand up and give a brilliant sermon, and it's gone. And you're sitting there going, and I had this discussion with a few, and it's like, that was just a memorable event, and it's gone. And they're like, well, we don't record these things. And you're sitting there going, this is just beautiful that you've missed. And now you can record it. And now there is the ability to see these things and go back to them. And I'm bringing it to today. I think the conversations that Tony has on his show are the things that people are going to sit there and they will listen to them in 10 years, 20 years time. Because they're conversations with people about the person and about the environment at the time. And that will be the bits that people will sit there and pull out in 10, 20, 30 years time, rather than just utter rubbish about TikToks and cats.
Lois, go ahead.
So I want to raise a warning. As I have admitted, offload some of my remembrances because, well, I don't remember them all that greatly. And so I write them down or I record them or whatever. If we give over our memory tasks to someone else, some human or something, then we run the risk of having other people or other things feed back to us false memories. And I don't mean false memories like, gee, I can't remember whether my socks were blue or green. I mean that people can intentionally delude us in the future if we don't keep track of our own memories. So including all this tech stuff is great, but there's pieces of paper, there's your own computer where you've got a way to dictate a story. Don't lose track of yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that because I'm a journaler, so I get up every morning and journal, and it's fascinating to be able to go back even just 6 months and to a year to have that and be able to and I'm a paper and pen girl for that. I tried it online and it just was not something that I wanted to offload to technology. As a matter of fact, I use a fountain pen most of the time.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Apple Notes is my best friend in some ways, because what I do is if I come across something, an article, a website, anything that I think is important that I want to be able to go back to, I will immediately put it in Apple Notes. The other thing that I do is that if I have information that I want to remember, let's just say something like a subscription password or something, or even bank account information or something like that, I might put that in Apple Notes as well. But what I will do is I will lock it. And so that if someone has access to my phone and they don't have my face, then, or my passwords, then they can't access it. So that is one way in which me, as a man of a certain age, seems to be able to navigate this thing of memory. And first, let me just say thank you, Leo, for your comment about conversation with Tony Mobley. And what I will say is that we had one of the most meaningful conversations for me personally last night, where we were talking about people with accessibilities. I think that it was a very important conversation. We will have more of them as time goes by in terms of different things. But what I wanted to say about memory is that, as already been said, we are in a position where we are able to offload some of the things that we had to know or remember, but we do have the capacity to be able to be more creative, I think, and innovative, because we are not bogged down with having to remember so much. And that I am in a memory crisis in a sense, because as Lois was talking about, people, maybe Tamara or someone said that you say things over and over and over again and it's a lie, then people begin to think it's the truth, or maybe that it's the truth. And I think that in a lot of ways, we are in that kind of environment where there is this struggle for people to kind of try to navigate what is true. And it's perplexing and problematic for me. And I'll stop talking about that.
Can I jump in? I had a fellow I worked with for about 8 months. I was kind of training him to be a TV producer. His name was Hassan Awarfa. He was raised and born and lived in Somalia until he escaped the war there. And he was Bedouin. And he grew up around the camels and the old men in the dunes at the watering holes. And he surprised me one day, because after about 4 months of working with him and him participating in a lot of what we were doing, he stopped me and said, "No, that's not what you said." And I went, "What?" "No, that meeting we had about 3 months ago, here's what you said." And he gave it to me verbatim. And I said, "How did you do that?" And he goes, "I remember everything. You don't carry books in the desert. And in the desert, the men sit around and tell you where the dunes have moved. And then the next time you're in that area, you now know the dune's not over here anymore. It's over there. And that's where you make your turn." He could remember the guy has 3 master's degrees now because he doesn't have to do much studying or memorization. He was trained from a small child at the feet of these elders to remember everything. It's not a photographic memory, it's an active operation. So the brain is capable of this stuff. I also worked with a guy who had a photographic memory, and it was a burden to him. As Leo has said, we're taught to remember, and then our brain says we got to forget some things. And there are a lot of painful experiences this man cannot forget. And so it's difficult.
Wow. I had not, that's very powerful, that last piece. I had not thought about that. And I'm also thinking about that sometimes there are traumatic things in our lives that, I could get in trouble for saying this, but that are better not remembered. There are things that we probably don't want to remember also.
It's our survival advantage too.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, absolutely. Wow. We've a
David,
lot of
can I say
people.
one more?
I'm sorry?
I was going to ask you if I could say one more thing.
Yeah, go for it.
Kind of, and I really don't. I don't really mean to go where I'm getting ready to go, but it's problematic for me when we talk about memory and things. So I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, but my father was from Orlando, Florida. That's where he grew up. And every summer we would go to Orlando because my grandmother and my uncle still lived there. And I remember very distinctly, we would leave New Jersey and we would drive to Virginia, where my mother's only sister lived. And we would, we'd be fine. We'd stay there. And then after we left her in Norfolk and headed further south, I remember very distinctly having to pull off on the side of the road, and we would sleep, we would use the bathroom, we would do everything that we had to do on the side of the road because we were not privileged to stay in a hotel. And I'm only telling you this because I am a man of a certain age, and I am a man who experienced these things as a child. And I can't not remember them because of maybe the trauma of it all, or whatever you want to call it. But there are people who will say in these times that what I experienced, I didn't experience. And so it's important for us to recognize, and I think especially in this day that Rabbi David, that you are celebrating today in remembrance of your people and the struggle that they have gone through, that we not forget that these things that have happened, we should remember from the standpoints of learning from them, and not let people tell us that certain things didn't happen. And that's really all I wanted to say. I could go into a whole lot of details about other things along that line, but I won't. But I think the most important thing is for people to recognize that be seekers of the truth, and do not rely on one single source for your news or your information.
Yeah, absolutely. I will. Let me just end with this along the lines of that. How do we keep those memories alive that are sometimes challenged? So this is a pretty amazing site. This is from USC. It's the USC Shoah Foundation. Shoah is the Hebrew word for Holocaust. And they created these amazing interactive experiences with real survivors called Eyewitness. And so he says, hello, let's have a chat. Press and hold the microphone button to ask a question or type it in. I'll go ahead and type a quick question in. Tell me about your story. And now he's going to, so I don't think you can hear him, but he is now answering my question. I can speak to him. I can hear him. I can interview him. And this is, although he has passed away, thank God, not from the Holocaust, but from old age. Nonetheless, technology is allowing us to make sure that truth is told, and that other truths like the one that you experienced, Tony, that those are never forgotten. Technology is one tool that we can use to keep those alive. The other tool is for us to talk about them. And I was, yes, full circle, and I feel very, very honored.
We people needing and being people. We are social beings.
That's right.
This tool is.
And you can record your own story. So either you can remember it later, or I have a recording of my mom talking about when she was in the WAC. And it's wonderful to go back and listen to her.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've really enjoyed listening to all of you right here and right now. And I'm also really grateful that Ernesto was in. Ernesto, he mentioned earlier on about refactoring I know what that means because I've been playing around with my new toy. So thank you, Ernesto, for that. And Paul and Ron Phelps, John Idelson. By the way, Leo set an extra seat because apparently he's taking a trip over there. John is. But to everyone who was watching, thank you so much for being with us. We do this every Thursday. So come back and visit us next Thursday. We'll be here. And big hugs to everyone. Have a lovely weekend, everyone. Take care.